Hello, Mario Hernandez, CPA with Miami Accountant. Today we're going to be talking about Fishbowl parts and products and the differences between QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online and the accounting effects that happen in each one according to the way you've mapped it and the way that the softwares behave. What's different about them between QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. So over here, we're going to look at the parts, and we have the mapping of the accounts. So if you open up parts and you go to the accounts tab in Fishbowl, you can map the accounts that are associated with those parts. Likewise, if you go to the product, you're going to see over here the income account under the details tab where you can map the product. Now, QuickBooks Online and Desktop, they have some similarities, but they do have some differences and some major differences the way they work in terms of the mapping. With QuickBooks Online, when you first connect Fishbowl, it automatically will create these FB underscore associated price, discount, miscellaneous, and sales tax. And it maps those to whatever you set up in your default account mappings when you do the configuration between Fishbowl and QuickBooks Online. Then one difference, because QuickBooks Desktop also creates some like FB item, FB subtotal, FB discount. So it does have some similar items it's creating. But the major difference is that with QuickBooks Desktop, we have this FB underscore item, and that's a generic item that's created, and it's used for every single transaction for every part or product that you create in Fishbowl. When you export a transaction with those parts or products, no matter what the part number is or product number, it's still going to use FB underscore item. It's always going to use that, and then it'll just put the product number and the product description in the memo field in the transaction in QuickBooks Desktop. With QuickBooks Online, it will create the part or product. It's going to create it as a service item. So QuickBooks Online, it's going to just keep creating all the different parts and products you have as service items, while with QuickBooks Desktop, it's just one generic item called FB underscore item. QuickBooks Online, they're all service type. They have to be service type. It's not compatible with other types. With QuickBooks Desktop, they all are going to be different types according to whatever the item is. So if you see it's FB underscore item is under other charge, then the subtotal, it uses the subtotal feature of QuickBooks Desktop. That's why it's a subtotal. And then it uses the discount feature of QuickBooks Desktop. That's why it's using discount type. So with QuickBooks Desktop, you can have thousands of parts and products in Fishbowl. You're not going to have them all showing up in QuickBooks Desktop. With QuickBooks Online, if you do have thousands of parts and products in QuickBooks Online, they're going to show up in QuickBooks Online. They're going to come from Fishbowl if you have them in Fishbowl, I'm sorry. Also, it doesn't just bring them over because you create them in either software. It only brings over the parts or products as you use them. So once you put them on a purchase order and you receive it, once you put it on a sales order and you sell it, you ship it, then it's going to create that sales service item in QuickBooks Online. Also, very important is that with QuickBooks Online, whatever account it shows here, I sell this to my customers, whatever shows here in my income account for sales, that's what it's going to use on my invoices to record the sales portion of the transaction. Whatever you shows here in the expense account under purchasing, that's what it's going to use on my purchasing side to record the asset account to where my inventory is being recorded to. So it doesn't matter what's in Fishbowl. When you first create it in Fishbowl, it pushes over that same information over to QuickBooks. But if this item existed first in QuickBooks Online, or if it already exists in QuickBooks Online and then you want to update it in Fishbowl, it's not going to update it for you in QuickBooks Online, and it's going to keep using whatever is in QuickBooks Online for the transactions, regardless of what you have here for the asset account or what you have over here for the under the product for the income account. That's very important to note. With QuickBooks Online, if you change any accounts here, you want to make sure to go back to your QuickBooks Online and update the accounts you have mapped in here to be the correct inventory asset account and here to be the correct sales account. That is the same one you have listed in Fishbowl. You have to manually do that to maintain it, but that's just what it requires. And these are things because of the way QuickBooks works, the programming in QuickBooks. Fishbowl's limited in what they can do, and they have to abide by the QuickBooks setup and the way that QuickBooks programming works. But with QuickBooks Desktop, it's more, I guess, flexible. It's more user-friendly. So with QuickBooks Desktop, they're able to just have that one FB_item, and you don't have to worry about that. If I was to change the account in Fishbowl, I also have to change it in QuickBooks Desktop. You don't have to do that with Desktop. You change the income account in Fishbowl, you change the cost of goods sold, the asset account in Fishbowl. It automatically updates the transaction in QuickBooks Desktop. You don't have to worry about having to update the item, because there really is no item that corresponds to the item that's in Fishbowl. It's always just using FB_item. And regardless of what you have, what it actually shows here, the transaction itself is going to use the correct accounts. So one example, I do have some transactions here. If I look at my transactions and I look at this recent transaction, like this bill, if I look at the transaction journal, it's using inventory asset number 2 because that's what I had configured in a prior sample I did. And it's using that even though if I look at this FB item, inventory asset number 2 does not show up anywhere. So with Desktop, it's going to automatically use what you have configured in Fishbowl, while with Online, it does not. That's the biggest major difference I see with the items and the mappings of the accounts and the eventual effect on your financial statements. QuickBooks Online, you have to be extra careful, and you have to update it in both Fishbowl and in QuickBooks Online, while with QuickBooks Desktop, you only have to update it in Fishbowl. Please subscribe and hit that like button to support our channel, and we will see you next time.